Well, welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and on this week's program, I want to talk about an astounding new twist in the wake of the Israel-Gaza war and the current ceasefire. There are credible reports that the United States is considering constructing a massive military base in southern Israel. To kind of oversee this ceasefire and the implementation of this 20-point peace plan. The projected cost of this military installation is a whopping $500 million. So that's $500 billion. This is an unprecedented development for the U.S., for Israel, and for the Middle East, and it has regional, geopolitical, and I believe prophetic implications. But the U.S. maintains a very strong military presence in the Middle East. I think a lot of people don't realize how strong the U.S. military presence is over in that part of the world. There are about 40 to 50,000 U.S. troops scattered across 19 sites in the Middle East. For instance, in Bahrain, that's home to the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. In Qatar, there's a 60-acre Air Force base there in the desert outside the capital of Doha, and that's the Middle East's largest U.S. base, housing about 10,000 troops. In Kuwait, there are several sprawling military installations. United Arab Emirates, there's an air base there south of the capital of Abu Dhabi. In Iraq, the U.S. maintains a presence at an air base there in western Anbar province. Also, there's another base situated in northern Iraq. In Saudi Arabia, there are about 2,500 U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. In Jordan, the country of Jordan, many people don't realize that at an air base there, the U.S. Air Force has their central 332nd Air Expeditionary Wing. And currently, there are about 200 U.S. military personnel stationed in southern Israel. They're kind of monitoring that ceasefire right now that's there. And eventually they're going to take charge of the humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza. But while there's a lot of troops over there in the Middle East, for the first time in history, the U.S. may be constructing a huge military facility in southern Israel. The Jerusalem Post says U.S. considering plans to build a large military base on Israel-Gaza border. Now, there's no physical size has been disclosed yet for this, but it's said that it will be a large size facility. It's projected that it could contain 10,000 square feet initially of office space. The Jerusalem Post says this: according to reports, part of the purpose of the base would be to enhance the U.S.'s ability to directly control events on the ground and to be less reliant on Israeli cooperation in dealing with diverse parties, whether Hamas, Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, or other third parties assisting in managing Gaza. Now, from what I've been able to find out so far, the proposed locations in southern Israel near the Gaza border, it'd be right there on the border of Israel and Gaza. Bloomberg says Navy considers base for 10,000 near Gaza. Says a senior Pentagon official maintained Tuesday that no U.S. troops will be on the ground in the Gaza Strip, but acknowledged planning is underway to base international troops near the Palestinian territory. The official said reports circulating in Israeli media are inaccurate, but he did not offer specifics. Still, the official said that as a planning organization, U.S. military personnel are currently working with international military partners to develop potential options for basing international troops that are part of a future International Stabilization Force. So this is a key part of this ceasefire. There's going to be an International Stabilization Force called the ISF that will be placed over there in Gaza and the border of Israel. The article in Bloomberg goes on and says the ISF's formation will support the president's Gaza peace plan. The official who commented on the matter on condition of anonymity said in a statement, to be clear, no U.S. troops will be deployed into Gaza. Any reporting to the contrary is false. And then one final quote from this article from Bloomberg says it said the project would be the first large-scale American military installation on Israeli territory, underscoring a deepening U.S. commitment to post-war stabilization efforts in Gaza. So this ISF, this International Stabilization Force, will be a multinational peacekeeping force. Egypt, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates have been named as countries that could contribute to this force. But other nations that have shown interest in sending troops to be part of this are Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, Azerbaijan, Australia, Malaysia, Canada, France, and Cyprus. So all of this will be under the authority of this Board of Peace that's being set up, and President Trump is the head of this Board of Peace. Now, in another article that I saw this week, in an online article in the Middle East Eye, it says Turkey readies military brigade for Gaza Stabilization Force. And in the article, it says that hundreds of soldiers are being prepared from Turkey to go to Gaza to be a part of this International Stabilization Force. Now, Israel is rejecting that. Israel says they won't support any Turkish boots on the ground in Gaza, but Turkey is bound and determined to be a part of this. So there's a standoff, right now, who's going to be able to be part of this stabilization force. But I find that fascinating because Turkey is one of the Gog-Magog nations. Like 4 of the places mentioned in Ezekiel 38 are in modern-day Turkey: Meshech and Tubal and Gomer and Togarmah. And we know that with Russia and Iran having lessened influence now in Syria, with the fall of Bashar al-Assad, Turkey now has moved into that vacuum and taken a lot more authority in Syria, which is right on Israel's northern border. Again, they're one of these Gog-Magog nations. Well, if they put troops in Gaza, that would give them troops right on Israel's western border. So we just see how Turkey continues to be involved deeply in the affairs of Israel and the surrounding nations. Now, obviously, this International Stabilization Force is significant. And this huge military facility in southern Israel, if constructed, would be a game changer in the Middle East. There's no doubt about that. The U.S. has thousands of troops deployed in the Middle East, about 40 to 50,000, but the U.S. has never had a base in Israel. Now, as I was preparing for this update today, just today, the day that this video is being made, in Newsweek, there's an article that just came out, U.S. responds to Gaza military base claim. And in Newsweek, it says this: the U.S. military has denied reports that it plans to build a $500 million base near Gaza, emphasizing no American troops will be deployed to the territory as part of ongoing efforts to support a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Now, it's clear, I think one thing's clear, the U.S. is not going to have boots on the ground. But this denial, I think, to me makes sense because Israel is going to have to be consulted and give final approval for the U.S. to do that. And my understanding is right now there's negotiations going on with Israel to get this approved. So the U.S. is denying reports right now that they're going to build this because they've not gotten final approval from the Netanyahu government. But apparently those approvals are in the works, and so the U.S. won't confirm, that this base is going to be built. But time will tell if something is constructed and what is constructed. But I'll just say this, something has to be constructed because all this International Stabilization Force, these troops have to stay somewhere. Obviously, there's no housing for them. There's nothing in Gaza that will work. Gaza's been destroyed. They're having to rebuild their own nation. There's not enough room down in southern Israel on the border with Gaza, anywhere there in Israel, to place all of these troops. There can be thousands of them there. In fact, this claim is that this base will hold up to 10,000 troops. So time will tell if something's constructed, but something's going to have to be built over there. And this makes a lot of sense. So the construction of this large military complex in Israel would be a massive first for the United States and for Israel. And so what we see here with this is if this is constructed or something's built there to house this International Stabilization Force, this will be really the first time that Israel relies on outsiders in this kind of a dominant way for its defense. Israel will kind of be farming out or subcontracting its defense to keep this ceasefire. They'll be offloading some of its security. And this would mark a major turning point, I believe, for Israel and the Middle East. Israel housing an international peacekeeping force within its own borders. And the Bible tells us in the end times that Israel will put its security into the hands of outsiders. According to Daniel 9:27, Israel will come in the future to an agreement with the Antichrist that will seem to guarantee a long period of peace. Now we know that it'll be a counterfeit peace. The Antichrist will break that 7-year treaty at the midpoint. But we know that during the first half of the tribulation, Israel will enjoy rest and security. That's found twice in Ezekiel chapter 38. They're going to be at rest. They're going to be living securely. And what we see happening right now in the wake of this war in Gaza could be a major first step toward Israel being more and more open to outside forces securing its peace. It's a kind of an initial conditioning, if you will, or a willingness to allow others to help secure and guarantee Israel's peace. And so all of this could be a striking foreshadow of the Antichrist covenant, when Israel will let down her guard, which will eventually pave the way for the Gog-Magog invasion in Ezekiel chapter 38. We'll keep watching these events and keep you updated on these as there's new developments. Well, thank you so much for watching today. Tell friends about this. If you're not a subscriber, I'd ask that you get on and subscribe to this. If you can like these programs, that would be great. To really help others have an opportunity to find out what's happening in our world in these times in which we live.